There was a moment in World War II when the United States revealed something that many underestimated at the time. While other nations focused on building the most powerful tanks, the heaviest armor, and the largest guns, America focused on something less obvious, but far more effective over time. It wasn't just about strength, it was about coordination, efficiency, and the ability to maintain constant pressure on the battlefield without slowing down. And at first, that approach didn't seem impressive. To some of their enemies, it even looked like a weakness, something they believed they could easily overcome in direct combat, without much difficulty or long-term consequence, especially when comparing raw firepower alone and ignoring the bigger picture. When American tanks began appearing across European battlefields, especially the M4 Sherman, they didn't immediately inspire fear. On paper, they seemed outmatched. Thinner armor, smaller guns, and less presence compared to German tanks like the Panther and the Tiger. Many crews believed they had the advantage. In direct combat, they expected to win. And in some early encounters, that belief felt justified, reinforcing the idea that these machines were not built for intense confrontation, but rather for something less demanding and easier to deal with under pressure and real battlefield conditions. But war is not decided on paper, and it is not defined by isolated encounters or individual comparisons between machines. The Sherman was never designed to be the strongest tank on the battlefield. It was built to be reliable, fast, easy to repair, and most importantly, easy to produce in massive numbers. This wasn't a flaw. It was a deliberate strategy. While other nations focused on building fewer, more complex machines that were difficult to replace, the United States focused on building enough to control the battlefield entirely, not through individual superiority, but through consistency, coordination, and scale that could be sustained over long periods of continuous engagement across multiple fronts, simultaneously without losing momentum. And that difference began to show in ways that were impossible to ignore. At first, encounters were limited. A few tanks here, a small engagement there. But over time, something changed. The number of American tanks increased. Engagements became more frequent. What once felt like isolated encounters slowly turned into something continuous. Enemy forces no longer faced a single tank or a small unit. They began encountering formations that moved together, supported each other, and kept advancing without pause, creating a level of pressure that was extremely difficult to escape or control effectively. In real time, under constant stress and uncertainty. The real strength of this approach wasn't in any single tank, but in how everything worked together. Tanks operated alongside infantry, supported by artillery, and coordinated with air power. A Sherman on its own might have seemed weaker, but it was rarely alone. It was part of a system designed to apply pressure constantly, from multiple directions, without giving the enemy time to recover or reorganize their defenses in a meaningful or lasting way. American industry made this possible. Tanks were produced faster than they could be destroyed. Damaged vehicles were repaired quickly and returned to the battlefield. Supply lines kept everything moving forward consistently. Losses didn't slow the advance. They were replaced almost immediately. And over time, this created a cycle that became increasingly difficult to break. no matter how strong or confident the opposing forces believed they were at the beginning of those engagements or confrontations. For those facing this system, the experience began to change. Confidence based on stronger armor or bigger guns started to fade. Because even if one tank was destroyed, more would arrive. The idea of facing a limited force disappeared completely. What replaced it was something far more difficult to deal with. Persistence. Something that did not rely on a single victory, but on continuous pressure applied over time, without giving space to recover or reorganize effectively. Even when positions were held, they were challenged again and again. The pressure didn't stop. It built over time, turning every engagement into part of something much larger. Something that could not be easily controlled or predicted by those trying to defend against it under constant pressure and overwhelming repetition. By the time many realized what they were truly facing, it was already too late. The system was working exactly as intended. It didn't rely on one decisive moment. It relied on constant pressure, coordination, and the ability to keep going when others simply couldn't anymore. They thought they understood the battlefield. They didn't. And in the end, that made all the difference.